Their marriage was fake from the start, but a real love story unfolded when they least expected. Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready. Let's start. The leather chair in the Whitmore & Co.'s conference room was worth more than Naomi Brooks' entire apartment. She could feel its supple texture against her arms as she sat rigidly, her heart thundering beneath her carefully pressed blouse. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston's financial district sparkled in the late afternoon sun, a world she'd been abruptly pulled back into after 6 months of absence. "But let me be clear," the man across the table said, his voice as smooth and expensive as the scotch in the crystal decanter behind him. This would be a business arrangement, nothing more. Jordan Whitmore hadn't changed in the year since she'd last glimpsed him in the corporate hallways, still impossibly well-tailored in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her outstanding student loans, still wearing that mask of careful control that made him look more like a statue than a man. The only difference was that now, instead of passing by her desk with a distracted nod, he was offering to make her his wife. 2 years, he continued, sliding a thick contract across the mahogany table. You'll have your own suite in the house, complete privacy, and a monthly stipend that should more than cover your mother's medical expenses. His fingers drummed once on the paper, the only tell of impatience or perhaps nervousness that she'd ever seen from him. In return, you attend necessary social functions, maintain the appearance of a happy marriage, and sign an ironclad NDA about the true nature of our arrangement. Naomi's throat felt dry. And why me? For the first time, Jordan's perfect posture faltered slightly. You worked here for 3 years. You understand discretion. You're intelligent and... He paused, choosing his words carefully. You have a reputation for integrity. I need someone I can trust. The irony of trusting someone to help him craft an elaborate lie didn't escape her. But Naomi's thoughts drifted to the stack of medical bills on her kitchen counter, to her mother's tired eyes as she tried to hide her pain, to the dwindling savings that wouldn't last another month. "The press will have questions," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "A sudden marriage between you and your former executive assistant, a black woman from Dorchester. They'll dig. Let them." His blue eyes met hers with unexpected intensity. "Your background is impeccable. College valedictorian, MBA from Boston University, perfect employment record. You're more qualified to be a Whitmore than half the social climbers throwing themselves at me since the announcement of my promotion to CEO. The bitterness in his tone surprised her. Naomi had always assumed Jordan Whitmore's life was as perfectly controlled as his Windsor knot. But there was something else beneath the surface, something that had driven Boston's most eligible bachelor to propose a fake marriage to a woman who'd once brought him coffee. "The scandal," she said quietly, "the one the papers have been hinting at. It's real, isn't it?" His jaw tightened. "My father's legacy, the jobs of thousands of employees, the future of this company, it all hangs in the balance. I need to project stability, security, a happy home life." He leaned forward slightly. "I'm offering you $2 million, Miss Brooks. $1 million for each year of marriage. Enough to pay for your mother's treatment and secure your future." Naomi's fingers trembled as she reached for the contract. The numbers blurred before her eyes, but certain phrases stood out starkly. Mutual privacy, separate living quarters, no physical intimacy required, dissolution after 24 months. "You haven't asked what happens if one of us falls in love with someone else during these 2 years, she said, surprising herself with the question. Something flickered across Jordan's face, so quickly she might have imagined it. "I don't believe in love, Ms. Brooks. It's a distraction at best, a liability at worst." He stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. "Take 24 hours to review the contract with your lawyer. If you accept, we'll need to move quickly. The announcement should go out by the end of the week." Naomi rose on slightly unsteady legs, clutching the contract like a lifeline. At the door, she paused, turning back to find him staring out at the city below, his shoulders bearing the weight of whatever secret threatened to bring down his empire. "Mr. Whitmore?" He turned, one eyebrow raised in question. "What if the truth comes out anyway?" The smile that curved his lips held no warmth. "Then, we'll both have enough money to start over somewhere far from here." He hesitated, then added softly, "And it's Jordan. If you're going to be my wife, you should probably use my first name." The word wife echoed in Naomi's mind as she rode the elevator down 60 floors, the contract burning a hole in her designer laptop bag, the last splurge she'd allowed herself before the layoffs. Outside, the autumn wind whipped between the skyscrapers, carrying the scent of approaching rain. She pulled her coat tighter, thinking of her mother's face when she'd had to switch to cheaper medications, of the panic attacks she'd started having when the bills piled up. 2 years, $2 million, a fake marriage to a man who'd barely spoken 10 sentences to her during her entire employment at his company. As the first drops of rain began to fall, Naomi Brooks looked up at the Whitmore & Co. tower stretching into the darkening sky and made a promise to herself. She would not let her heart get involved. This was business, nothing more. She had no way of knowing that promise would be the first of many lies in her new life as Mrs. Whitmore. The Whitmore estate loomed before Naomi like something out of a period drama, all Georgian architecture and manicured gardens. Her small collection of belongings, packed into 3 suitcases, felt absurdly inadequate as the car rolled up the circular driveway. 2 weeks had passed in a whirlwind of contracts, press releases, and a small civil ceremony where she'd worn a cream-colored pantsuit and tried not to flinch when Jordan slipped a 4-carat diamond ring onto her finger. "The East Wing will be yours," Jordan said as they stepped into the marble foyer. His voice echoed in the cavernous space, bouncing off crystal chandeliers and oil paintings of stern-faced Whitmores. "I've had it renovated to ensure your complete privacy." An entire wing, Naomi thought, following him up the grand staircase. Her apartment in Dorchester could have fit in this entryway alone. The magnitude of what she'd agreed to pressed down on her shoulders with each step. "And your suite includes a sitting room, bedroom, private bath, and a small office," Jordan continued, leading her down a hallway lined with antique mirrors. "I've arranged for a decorator to help you personalize the space, if you'd like." He pushed open a set of double doors, and Naomi's breath caught. The sitting room before her was bathed in afternoon light from floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the garden. Soft cream walls, elegant modern furniture, and built-in bookshelves created an atmosphere that was both luxurious and welcoming. "Through there is your bedroom," Jordan gestured to another door. "And this," he pressed a hidden panel in the bookshelf, revealing a keypad, "is your private safe. The code is currently your birthday, but you should change it." Naomi turned to him, surprised. "You know my birthday?" Something passed across his face, too quick to read. "It was in your HR file." He straightened his already perfect tie. "I'll leave you to settle in. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, will bring up your bag shortly." "Wait," Naomi called as he reached the door. "What about rules? Boundaries?" Jordan paused, his hand on the doorknob. "Yes, we should discuss those." He checked his watch. "Dinner is served at 7 in the formal dining room. We can talk then." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Naomi alone in her gilded cage. She spent the next hour exploring her new domain, trying to reconcile this reality with the life she'd left behind. The bathroom was bigger than her old bedroom, with a freestanding tub that could fit 3 people. The walk-in closet was a room unto itself, though her modest wardrobe occupied only a tiny fraction of it. But it was the office that finally broke through her careful composure. A sleek laptop sat on the desk, next to a framed photo of her mother that she knew had been taken from her social media. Beside it lay a stack of medical bills, her mother's bills, stamped paid in full. Naomi sank into the leather chair, her fingers trembling as she touched the papers. This wasn't part of their agreement. The first payment wasn't supposed to come until after the marriage announcement next week. Yet here was proof that Jordan Whitmore had already fulfilled his end of the bargain. At precisely 7 o'clock, Naomi descended to the dining room, wearing one of her few designer dresses, a navy sheath that suddenly felt inadequate among the crystal and silver settings. Jordan stood as she entered, and for a moment she caught him staring before his expression smoothed back into its usual mask. "You look lovely," he said, pulling out her chair. "Thank you." She sat, trying not to show how much the simple courtesy affected her. "And thank you for taking care of my mother's bills." Jordan took his seat at the head of the table, a careful distance away. It seemed practical to handle it immediately. Less paper trail that way. Of course. Everything was about practicality with him. The first course arrived, something French that Naomi couldn't pronounce, and they ate in silence until Jordan finally spoke. "About the rules." Naomi set down her fork. "Yes? First, we maintain separate schedules as much as possible, but there will be social obligations we must attend together. I'll have my assistant send you a calendar." "Understood." "Second, the staff are discreet, but we should be careful about maintaining appearances when they're present, which means we share a bedroom when they clean." Naomi finished. At his surprised look, she added, "I did manage your schedule for 3 years, Mr. Whitmore. I understand the importance of appearances." "Jordan," he corrected automatically. "And yes, my suite is in the West Wing. You'll have a key, but it's only for appearances. I'll never enter your rooms without explicit permission." The soup bowls were cleared, replaced by the main course. Naomi pushed a piece of perfectly cooked salmon around her plate. "What about personal relationships?" Jordan's knife paused mid-cut. "The contract stipulates—" "I know what the contract says. But practically speaking, what's our story if one of us is seen with someone else? We don't have relationships with others," he said firmly. "That would defeat the purpose of this arrangement. The press would have a field day, and the scandal I'm trying to avoid would pale in comparison." Naomi nodded, ignoring the odd relief she felt at his answer. "And what about, us? Us? How do we act around each other? What's our story? People will ask how we fell in love when we started dating. We need a narrative that's believable." Jordan set down his cutlery, reaching for his wine glass. "We say that after you left the company, we ran into each other at a charity event. Away from the office dynamics, we connected. A whirlwind romance followed, and we decided life was too short for long engagements." "Simple enough," Naomi agreed. "And the quick wedding?" A shadow crossed his face. "My father's recent death made me reassess my priorities. People will believe that." The mention of his father, who died 6 months ago in a boating accident, brought an uncomfortable silence to the table. Naomi remembered the news coverage, the speculation about the future of Whitmore and Co., and the first whispers of the scandal that had led to this arrangement. "One last thing," Jordan said as dessert was served. "And we should have a signal for when one of us needs to create an intimate moment for appearances' sake, something subtle, like a safe word, but for fake affection." The words slipped out before Naomi could stop them. To her absolute shock, Jordan laughed, a real laugh that transformed his entire face. For a moment, she glimpsed the man beneath the CEO mask, and something dangerous fluttered in her chest. Exactly like that," he said, his eyes still bright with amusement. "I suggest this." He reached across the table and touched his thumb to the inside of her wrist, so lightly she might have imagined it. A simple gesture, easily disguised as casual contact. Naomi's skin tingled where he'd touched her. "That works." Later that night, lying in her new bed that felt too big and too empty, Naomi stared at the spot on her wrist where she could still feel his touch. "This is business," she reminded herself firmly, "nothing more." But as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't help wondering if Jordan Whitmore's laugh would haunt her dreams. The Whitmore Foundation's annual gala was exactly as extravagant as Naomi remembered from her days coordinating guest lists and seating charts. Crystal glasses clinked, diamonds sparkled, and Boston's elite moved through the hotel ballroom like pieces on a chessboard, each step calculated, each conversation a strategic move. The difference was that now she stood at the center of it all, her arm linked through Jordan's, wearing a burgundy goddess gown that cost more than 6 months of her old rent. The dress had arrived that morning with a note in Jordan's precise handwriting. For tonight, the press will be watching. They'd been married for 3 weeks, and Naomi had quickly learned that everything in Jordan's world was a performance. The way he adjusted her wrap with intimate familiarity as they arrived, the practiced smile he gave photographers, the gentle hand at the small of her back as they moved through the crowd. Mrs. Whitmore, a silver-haired woman, approached, dripping in old money and judgment. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Victoria Ashworth, head of the Foundation's board. Please call me Naomi." She extended her hand with the grace she'd been practicing in front of her mirror. "Jordan's told me so much about your work with the Foundation." Victoria's perfectly lined eyes flickered between them. "Has he? How fascinating. You know, we were all quite surprised by the sudden marriage. Jordan's always been so focused on business." Naomi felt Jordan's fingers tense against her back. "Time to perform. Actually, that's what drew me to him," she said, turning to look up at her husband with practiced adoration. His passion, his drive. But what really surprised me was discovering his softer side. She reached up to straighten his bow tie, and gesture they'd rehearsed. "The man who brings me tea when I'm working late, who remembers tiny details about my favorite books." Jordan's eyes met hers, and something real flickered beneath the performance. His thumb brushed the inside of her wrist, their signal, before he leaned down to press a kiss to her temple. "You make me sound far more romantic than I am, darling." Victoria's expression softened slightly. "Well, marriage certainly seems to agree with you, Jordan. I've never seen you so relaxed." As the conversation continued, Naomi caught fragments of whispered discussions around them. Such an unusual choice. Must be something special to catch Jordan Whitmore. Heard she used to work for him. The weight of their scrutiny pressed against her skin like humid air before a storm. "Champagne," Jordan murmured in her ear as Victoria finally moved on to her next target. "God, yes." He led her to a quiet corner near one of the massive floral arrangements, snagging 2 glasses from a passing waiter. "You're doing wonderfully," he said, his voice low. "They're already falling for you." "For us," she corrected, taking a sip. "This only works if they believe in us as a couple." Jordan's eyes traced over her face, lingering for a moment on her lips. "I don't think that will be a problem." Before Naomi could process the implications of his tone, a new voice cut through their bubble. Jordan Whitmore and his mysterious new bride. The champagne turned sour in Naomi's stomach as she turned to face a stunning blonde in a dress that looked painted on. She didn't need an introduction to recognize Evelyn Monroe, Jordan's ex-fiancée, and the woman who held the key to the scandal threatening to destroy him. Evelyn. Jordan's CEO mask slammed back into place. "I wasn't aware you were on the guest list." "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world." Evelyn's smile was razor-sharp as she turned to Naomi. "I have to admit, I was intrigued when I heard the news. Jordan choosing an employee. It seemed so beneath him." Naomi felt Jordan start to move, probably to escort her away, but something inside her snapped. She'd spent 3 years watching Evelyn sweep through the office like she owned it, treating assistants like furniture. "Former employee, actually," Naomi said smoothly. "But you'd know all about trying to climb the corporate ladder through personal relationships, wouldn't you?" Evelyn's perfectly arranged features twisted for a fraction of a second. "Careful, dear. You don't want to make enemies you can't handle." "Is that a threat?" Jordan's voice had dropped to a dangerous register she'd never heard before. "Of course not." Evelyn laid a manicured hand on Jordan's arm. Naomi watched his jaw clench. "Just some friendly advice between women, though I do wonder." She leaned closer, her voice dripping honey-coated venom. "Does your new wife know about the night before our engagement ended? About what really happened with the companies?" "That's enough." Jordan's tone could have frozen hell. "Naomi knows everything, Evelyn, and unlike you, she can be trusted with it." The word "everything" hung between them like a lie neither could acknowledge, because Naomi didn't know, not really. She knew only that there were documents, that there was a threat, that her marriage was meant to prevent some greater scandal. But watching Jordan defend her, seeing the barely contained fury in his eyes, she realized she didn't need to know, not yet. What mattered was the way he'd moved slightly in front of her, shielding her from Evelyn's venom. What mattered was the instinct to protect him back. "Come on, darling," Naomi said, sliding her hand into his. "I believe you promised me a dance." She felt Jordan's surprise at the deviation from their script, but he recovered instantly. "So I did." As they moved onto the dance floor, Evelyn's voice followed them. "Enjoy it while it lasts." Jordan pulled Naomi closer than they'd practiced, as the orchestra began a waltz. His hand was warm against her back, and she could feel the tension radiating through his body. "I'm sorry," he murmured, leading her through the steps with practiced ease. "I should have warned you she might be here. I can handle Evelyn Monroe." Naomi tried to focus on the dance steps and not the way Jordan's cologne was making her head spin. But she's right about one thing. "Oh, I don't know everything." She met his eyes. "And someday that might matter." Something vulnerable crossed his face. "Naomi, not tonight," she said quickly. "Tonight, we dance, we smile, we play our parts." She squeezed his hand gently. "But eventually, if you want me to help you fight your battles, I need to know what we're fighting." Jordan's steps faltered for a fraction of a second, so briefly that only someone pressed against him would have noticed. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "When did you become so dangerous?" "Dangerous, yes." His thumb traced circles on her back, sending shivers up her spine. "Because right now, I'm tempted to tell you everything." And that wasn't part of our arrangement. The orchestra shifted to a slower song. Around them, other couples swayed, but Naomi barely noticed them. All she could focus on was the way Jordan was looking at her, like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, a risk he hadn't calculated. "Then maybe," she whispered, "we need a new arrangement." His only response was to pull her closer, until she could feel his heartbeat against her chest. They danced in silence, both pretending this was still just a performance, both knowing it had become something else entirely. Across the room, Evelyn Monroe watched them with cold eyes, her phone pressed to her ear. But for now, in the safety of the dance floor, neither Jordan nor Naomi noticed. They were too busy trying not to fall. The morning after the gala, Naomi woke to chaos. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, and when she finally checked it, her stomach dropped. Splashed across every major Boston news site was a photo of her and Jordan dancing, his face bent close to hers, both of them lost in a moment that looked far too real for comfort. The headlines ranged from saccharine, Boston's most eligible bachelor finally tamed, to suspicious, Whitmore and Co., CEO's whirlwind marriage, love or damage control. But it was the text from her mother that made her hands shake. "Baby girl, why didn't you tell me you were in love with him?" Naomi stared at those words until they blurred. Because that was the problem, wasn't it? The lines between performance and reality were starting to blur, and she couldn't afford that, not with $2 million and her mother's health hanging in the balance. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. "Naomi," Jordan's voice was tense. "We need to talk." She quickly pulled on a silk robe over her pajamas. "Come in." Jordan entered, already immaculate in a charcoal suit despite the early hour, but there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept, and his laptop was clutched in his hand like a shield. "Have you seen the news?" he asked, closing the door behind him. "Hard to miss it." She gestured to her phone. We're trending on Twitter." "It's not just the dance photos." He set his laptop on her sitting room table, turning it to face her. "Evelyn's made her first move." Naomi leaned forward to read the article displayed on the screen. It was from a smaller gossip site, but the implications were clear. Sources close to the Whitmore family suggest the recent marriage may be linked to irregularities in the company's overseas acquisitions. "She's testing the waters," Jordan said, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, the first crack in his composure she'd seen since the dance floor. "Seeing how much she can hint at without exposing herself, then maybe it's time you exposed the truth to me." Naomi met his gaze steadily. "What does she have on you, Jordan?" He began to pace, another un-Jordan-like gesture that set her nerves on edge. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it." She stood, blocking his path. "I'm your wife, even if only on paper. Whatever scandal she's holding over you, I'm already implicated." "I deserve to know." Jordan stopped so abruptly they nearly collided. This close, she could see the faint stubble on his jaw, smell the coffee on his breath. "You're right," he said softly. "But once I tell you, everything changes." "Everything's already changing." The words came out barely above a whisper. Something flickered in his eyes, that same vulnerable look from the dance floor. Then he stepped back, creating safe distance between them. "Oh, 6 months ago, just before my father's death, I discovered discrepancies in our Asian market acquisitions," he began, his voice carefully controlled. "Shell companies, inflated valuations, bribes disguised as consulting fees. All of it led back to my father and his partner, Richard Monroe." "Evelyn's father," Naomi breathed. Jordan nodded grimly. "I brought my concerns to them privately. The next day, my father took the boat out, despite storm warnings. The accident report said he'd been drinking. The implications hung heavy in the air. I think he couldn't face the scandal. Or maybe he was sending me a message." Jordan's hands clenched at his sides. Either way, I was left with a choice. Expose everything and watch my father's legacy crumble, or bury it, Naomi finished. But Evelyn found out. She found the proof I'd gathered, threatened to release it unless... He broke off, turning to stare out the window. "Unless what?" "Unless I married her." The bitterness in his voice made her flinch. She wanted the Whitmore name, the social status. When I refused, she gave me 6 months to reconsider before she'd go public. Naomi sank onto the sofa, processing, "And that deadline is next week." He turned back to her, his face haunted. "I'm sorry, Naomi. I should have told you everything from the start, but I thought if I could present a stable image, a happy marriage, I could buy time to fix things quietly, keep thousands of employees from losing their jobs because of my father's crimes, and protect your own reputation." The words came out sharper than she intended. "No." His response was immediate, fierce. "I don't care about my reputation, but this company is more than my father's mistakes. It's families who've worked there for generations, pension funds, charitable foundations, community projects. I couldn't let it all burn without trying to save it." Naomi stood, drawn by the pain in his voice. "Let me help." "You already are." His smile was sad. "More than you know." "No, I mean really help." She stepped closer, ignoring the warning bells in her head. "I was your executive assistant for 3 years. Jordan. I know how the company works, how the files are organized. If Evelyn has documents, I might know where to look for proof of them in the system. It's too dangerous." But she could see him wavering. "If anyone found out, I'm already involved." She laid a hand on his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "And I'm tired of being a prop in someone else's game." Jordan stared at her hand on his sleeve, then slowly covered it with his own. The touch sent electricity through her skin. "Why?" he asked roughly. "Why would you risk this?" "Because I'm starting to care too much. Because last night's dance wasn't just a performance. Because every time you look at me like this, I forget all the reasons this is a bad idea." But she couldn't say any of that. Instead, she squeezed his arm gently. "Because it's the right thing to do." He held her gaze for a long moment, and Naomi felt the air change between them, charged with something that had nothing to do with business arrangements or convenient lies. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Jordan checked it, his expression darkening. "Emergency board meeting. They've seen the articles." "Go." Naomi stepped back, rebuilding her professional walls. "Do what you need to do. But tonight, we start looking for answers." He nodded, already reaching for his suit jacket. At the door, he paused. "Naomi." "Yes?" "Last night, when we were dancing." He seemed to struggle with the words. "Was any of it real?" Her heart thundered in her chest. "Was it real for you?" Instead of answering, He gave her one last unreadable look and left, closing the door softly behind him. Naomi stood in the silence of her gilded cage, touching the spot on her arm where she could still feel his hand. The morning sun caught her wedding ring, sending prisms dancing across the wall, beautiful illusions, just like their marriage. But as she looked at the newspaper photos of their dance, at the way Jordan was looking at her like she was the only real thing in his world, she wondered if some illusions could become truth, given enough time and trust. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from her mother. "When you love someone, baby, no contract in the world can protect your heart." Naomi closed her eyes, remembering Jordan's question. Was any of it real? The truly terrifying thing was, she no longer knew the answer. The Whitmore mansion felt different at night. Shadows softened its grandeur. Silence amplified its secrets, and the usual barriers between Jordan and Naomi seemed to blur in the lamp-lit darkness of his private study. "These are all the acquisition files from the last 2 years, Jordan said, setting a laptop and several external hard drives on his desk. It was nearly midnight, and he'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, small concessions to exhaustion that made him look startlingly human. Naomi perched on the edge of his leather chair, already scanning through folders. She'd changed into black leggings and an oversized sweater after dinner, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. The Asia-Pacific divisions would have their own internal documentation system, she murmured, fingers flying over the keyboard. Your father's partner, Richard Monroe, he headed those acquisitions, right? Yes. Jordan leaned over her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. But everything went through standard review processes. That's what I could never understand. How did no one catch this? Because no one was looking for it. Naomi pulled up a spreadsheet. See these consulting fees? They're all just under the threshold that would trigger additional oversight, spread across different subsidiaries, different quarters, hiding in plain sight. Jordan's hand gripped the back of her chair. Can you trace where the money went? Maybe. She opened another window, then froze. Jordan, what is it? These transfers, they're still happening, even after your father's death. Jordan straightened abruptly. That's impossible. I shut down all the questionable ventures as soon as I took over. Look, she pointed to a series of transactions, each carefully disguised, but following the same pattern they'd discovered. Someone still running the old system, monthly payments to shell companies, all ultimately flowing to an account in the Cayman Islands. Richard Monroe. Jordan's voice was deadly quiet. He's continuing without my father, without my knowledge. And Evelyn probably has proof that you knew about it earlier and did nothing. Naomi turned to face him. That's what she's holding over you, isn't it? The appearance of complicity. Their faces were inches apart. In the soft lamplight, she could see the muscle working in his jaw, the storm brewing in his eyes. I should have stopped it sooner, he said roughly. The moment I suspected, you tried to do the right thing. She touched his arm without thinking. You went to them first, tried to handle it privately, and my father died. He didn't pull away from her touch. If anything, he seemed to lean into it. Sometimes I wonder if I caused... No, Naomi stood, forcing him to look at her. Your father made his choices. So did Richard Monroe, and so did you. You chose to protect the company, the employees, even when it meant making an impossible deal with me. Something shifted in Jordan's expression. The deal with you was never impossible. His voice dropped lower. Being near you without... He caught himself, stepping back. But Naomi's heart was already racing. Without what? Instead of answering, he moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit gardens. We should focus on the evidence. But Naomi had spent too many nights lying awake, wondering about the moments when his mask slipped, when his touch lingered too long. She was tired of pretending. You never answered my question this morning, she said quietly, about whether the dance was real. Jordan's shoulders tensed. Naomi, because it was real for me. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. And I think maybe it was real for you too. He turned slowly, his expression raw in a way she'd never seen before. It can't be real. Why not? Because I'm paying you to be here. The words seemed to pain him. Because there's $2 million between us and a contract that says none of this should matter. Naomi stepped closer, her heart thundering. What if I told you I don't care about the money anymore? Don't. His voice was hoarse. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. Another step. The money saved my mother's life, and I'll always be grateful, but that's not why I'm still here, not why I'm helping you fight this battle. Jordan's breathing had grown uneven. Nash, why are you here, then? Because somewhere between all the lies we're telling everyone else, I started being honest with myself. She was close enough now to see the vulnerability in his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly at his sides. I'm here because when you laugh, really laugh, not that fake society chuckle, it makes me want to discover what else is real beneath all your careful control. I'm here because you remember my birthday and how I take my tea and which flowers I've never been given. I'm here because... His kiss caught her mid-sentence, desperate and deep, and nothing like the chaste peck they'd shared at their civil ceremony. His hands cupped her face like she was something precious, and hers fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. All the tension of the past weeks, all the careful distance and professional facades melted away in the heat of his mouth on hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Jordan rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the night you stood up to Evelyn Monroe. Naomi smiled, her fingers tracing the rapid pulse in his neck. Only since then. No. He kissed her again, softer this time. Hey, since the day you walked into my office and agreed to this insane arrangement, since you looked at me like you could see past every wall I've built, since a sharp knock at the study door made them jump apart. Mr. Whitmore? Mrs. Chen's voice was urgent. There's someone at the gate. Mrs. Monroe says it's an emergency. Reality crashed back like a bucket of cold water. Jordan's expression hardened as he straightened his tie. Tell her I'll be right down. Jordan! Naomi touched his arm. He caught her hand, pressing a fierce kiss to her palm. We're not done with this conversation. The investigation or the kissing? She tried to smile, but worry gnawed at her stomach. Both. His eyes burned with promise. Wait here. Whatever Evelyn wants, I don't trust her to see you tonight. But as Jordan left to face his ex-fiancée, Naomi turned back to the computer screen, her lips still tingling from his kiss. The numbers stared back at her, and something caught her eye, a pattern she'd missed before. Oh, God, she whispered, diving deeper into the files. Jordan, what have you walked into? Because there, buried in the data, was evidence that the corruption went far beyond Richard Monroe. And Evelyn's late-night visit suddenly felt less like an emergency and more like a carefully planned distraction. Naomi glanced at the study door, then back at the damning numbers on the screen. She had minutes, maybe seconds, to decide. Follow Jordan's request to stay put, or follow her instincts about what was really happening. The choice, in the end, was simple. She'd promised to help him fight this battle, even if it meant fighting it alone. Naomi's heart pounded as she copied the incriminating files onto a secure drive, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The evidence was staggering. The corruption didn't just flow through Richard Monroe. It spread like a web through half the board of directors. People Jordan trusted, people who'd attended their wedding, people who were probably watching their every move. The sound of voices drifted up from the front drive. Through the study window, she could see Jordan's tall figure facing Evelyn, their shadows long in the security lights. But it was the third shadow that made her blood run cold. Richard Monroe himself, emerging from the car. Come on, she muttered as the file transfer crawled, 89%, 90%. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your mother's room at Mass General, now. Ice flooded her veins. She dialed her mother's number with trembling fingers, counting the rings. 1, 2, 3. Baby girl. Her mother's voice was groggy. It's late. Mom, are you okay? Is anyone there? I'm fine. Just tired from therapy. Why? Listen to me carefully, Naomi cut in, watching the figures on the driveway. Call the nurse. Don't let anyone in unless you know them. I don't care what ID they show you. Naomi, you're scaring me. Please, Mom. Promise me. I promise. But what's going on? The file transfer hit 100%. Naomi pocketed the drive. I love you. I'll explain everything soon. She hung up, just as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Too many footsteps. Voices approached. Jordan's tight with anger, Evelyn's dripping false sweetness, Richard Monroe's deep rumble. Naomi glanced at the laptop, still displaying the damning evidence. No time to close everything properly. Instead, she quickly opened other folders, burying their research beneath layers of mundane corporate documents. The study door opened. Absolutely unnecessary to come at this hour, Jordan was saying as he entered. He stopped short when he saw Naomi. Something flashed in his eyes. Warning, fear. Oh, how cozy, Evelyn drawled, gliding in behind him. She wore blood-red stilettos that matched her lipstick. With the happy couple, burning the midnight oil. Richard Monroe filled the doorway behind them, tall, silver-haired, radiating the kind of power that came from decades of getting his way. His cold eyes fixed on Naomi. Mrs. Whitmore, I don't believe we've had the pleasure. Mr. Monroe! Naomi rose, channeling every lesson in poise she'd learned these past weeks. What brings you here so late? Concern, he said smoothly. About certain rumors reaching the board. About unauthorized investigations into company matters. Jordan moved to stand between them, his shoulder brushing Naomi's. I told you, any internal reviews are standard procedure, being conducted by your wife. Evelyn's smile was sharp. A former employee with no current position or clearance. I trust my wife. Jordan's voice was steel. That's touching. Richard stepped closer, his presence filling the room. But trust isn't the issue here. Security is. Protocol. His gaze swept over the laptop. Speaking of which, everything happened at once. Richard reached for the computer. Jordan moved to block him, and Naomi, running on pure instinct, knocked over her tea mug. Hot liquid splashed across the keyboard. Oh! She grabbed tissues, dabbing frantically. I'm so sorry. I'm such a klutz. The laptop, Richard started forward, is mine. Jordan cut in smoothly. Personal files only, though it's probably ruined now. Naomi continued apologizing, playing the role of embarrassed trophy wife while her heart raced. The tea would take hours to dry, making any immediate attempt to access the files impossible without damaging the machine. How convenient, Evelyn murmured. It's late, Jordan said firmly. Whatever concerns the board can be addressed through proper channels. Tomorrow. Richard straightened his Italian suit. Of course. But Jordan... His smile didn't reach his eyes. Remember what happened the last time someone in your family tried to play hero? The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Jordan's hands clenched at his sides, but his voice remained steady. Good night, Richard. Evelyn. They left, their footsteps echoing through the quiet house. The moment the front door closed, Jordan turned to Naomi. Are you? She pressed a finger to his lips, then pointed to her phone. Typing quickly, she showed him the screen. House probably bugged. Found something huge. Not safe here. His eyes widened as he read. He took the phone, typing back. What did you find? Half the board involved, including Anderson, Chen, Wallace. She named 3 directors Jordan had known since childhood. His face went pale. Taking her hand, he led her onto the balcony, where the night wind and fountain would mask their voices. Tell me everything, he whispered. So she did, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. The complex money trail, the board members' involvement, the threatening text about her mother. With each revelation, Jordan's expression grew darker. We have to move the evidence, he said finally. Somewhere safe, already done. She patted her pocket where the drive sat heavy as a secret. But Jordan, what did Richard mean about your father? About playing hero? Pain flickered across his face. The night before he died, I didn't just confront him about the corruption. I told him I had proof, that I'd expose everything if he didn't help me clean it up. His voice cracked. The next morning, the boating accident. Naomi breathed. I think there are no accidents when this much money is involved. He cupped her face in his hands. Which is why you need to leave. Now. Tonight? What? No. They threatened your mother, Naomi. These people killed my father. I won't risk. She kissed him, fierce and desperate, cutting off his protests. I'm not leaving you to face this alone. Naomi, no. She gripped his shirt, forcing him to meet her eyes. I love you, you stupid, noble man. And if you think I'm running away just when I finally admitted that to myself. This time he kissed her, backing her against the balcony railing. When they broke apart, his eyes blazed with something beyond desire, determination, fear, love. I love you too, he said roughly. Which is why we do this, Smart, together. Naomi nodded, her heart racing with more than fear. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. We use their playbook against them, make them think they've won, that they've scared us apart. She took a shaky breath. I leave tonight, publicly. A fight, a scandal. Give them what they expect, the marriage falling apart under pressure. Understanding dawned in his eyes, while we work behind the scenes to expose everything. She touched his face, memorizing the feel of him. But we can't see each other, can't contact each other normally. It has to look real. Jordan pressed his forehead to hers. How long? A week, maybe 2. Long enough to get the evidence to people we trust, to set the trap. 2 weeks, he repeated, like the words caused him physical pain. Then he kissed her again, deep and thorough, like he was trying to make up for all the kisses they'd have to miss. An hour later, Naomi stormed out of the Whitmore mansion, tears on her face that weren't entirely fake. She screamed at Jordan in front of the security cameras, threw her wedding ring at his feet. And as she drove away into the night, the evidence drive secure in her pocket and her heart breaking with every mile, she whispered a promise. 2 weeks, my love. Then we burn their whole world down. 10 days. 240 hours of pretending her heart wasn't still in that mansion on Beacon Hill. Naomi stared at her laptop screen in the small Harvard Square coffee shop she'd chosen for its crowd of students. Perfect camouflage for someone who didn't want to be noticed. The headlines hadn't stopped since her dramatic exit. Whitmore marriage implodes. Sources claim CEO's wife fled after mysterious late-night argument, and most recently, Jordan Whitmore spotted having dinner with ex-fiancé, reconciliation in the works. That last one had hurt, even knowing it was part of their plan. The photos showed Jordan and Evelyn at his favorite restaurant, her hand on his arm, his face carefully blank, playing his role just as Naomi was playing hers. She turned back to her screen, where she'd been meticulously documenting every transaction, every connection, every piece of evidence she'd stolen that night. The corruption went deeper than they'd imagined. Board members, department heads, even their outside accounting firm, all complicit in a scheme that had stolen billions. Her burner phone, the only secure way she and Jordan had to communicate, buzzed with a message. Beach House deed signed 1987. Their code. Jordan had signed something important, something that would help their case, but the rest of his message made her blood run cold. Roses dying early this year. Warning. Danger. She scanned the coffee shop instinctively. Nothing seemed out of place, but there. A man by the window who'd been there too long, his coffee untouched. Another near the door, pretending to read but holding his newspaper upside down. With practiced casualness, Naomi packed up her laptop. She'd planned for this, had escape routes mapped out. But as she stood, a new figure slid into the chair across from her. Hello, Naomi. Victoria Ashworth, the board member from the gala, the one who'd questioned their marriage. But now Naomi knew she was more than that. The offshore accounts had revealed Victoria's deep involvement in the conspiracy. Mrs. Ashworth. Naomi's voice was steady despite her racing heart. I'm afraid I was just leaving. Sit. Victoria's smile was glass-sharp. I think we both know those gentlemen by the door and window would prefer you stay. Naomi sat, her mind racing. Where had she slipped up? How had they traced her? You know, Victoria continued, stirring her untouched latte, I actually believed it at first. The fairy tale, the ambitious assistant who caught her boss's heart. She leaned forward. But then I wondered, why would Jordan Whitmore, who spent years refusing to mix business with pleasure, suddenly marry an employee right when the board was closing in on his little investigation? I don't know what you're talking about. Naomi clutched her bag closer, feeling the weight of the evidence drive inside. Jordan and I are working together? Victoria's smile widened. Oh yes, we know. Did you really think that little scene you staged would fool people who've been playing this game since before you were born? Ice slid down Naomi's spine, but she'd learned from the best how to maintain a poker face. Oh, if you know so much, why are you here? To offer you a choice. Victoria set a folder on the table. Inside is proof that your mother's recent medical coverage was obtained through insurance fraud. One call, and she loses everything. Her treatments, her medication. She shrugged delicately. Who knows if she'd survive the shock? Naomi's fingers trembled against her coffee cup. You wouldn't. No. Victoria's eyes were cold. You ask Jordan what happened to his father when he tried to expose us. Ask yourself if you want your mother to have a similar accident. The threat hung between them like a loaded gun. But something in Victoria's words caught Naomi's attention. When he tried to expose us, not Richard Monroe, us. What do you want? Naomi asked, playing for time as her mind raced. The drive you stole? All copies of the evidence. And, Victoria smiled, a public statement about how Jordan manipulated you, used you to cover up his own involvement in the company's scandals. Understanding dawned like ice water in Naomi's veins. You want to frame him, make him the scapegoat for everything. Smart girl. Victoria stood smoothly. You have 24 hours. Choose wisely. She left, her Louboutins clicking against the floor. The men by the door and window followed, their message delivered. Naomi sat frozen, her coffee growing cold. Then, with shaking fingers, she pulled out her burner phone and typed, Thunder expected at midnight, their code for emergency meeting at their safe house, a small apartment she'd rented under an alias the day after she'd left the mansion. But as she went to press send, another text from Jordan appeared. Don't trust the roses, garden compromised. The safe house was compromised. They were being watched. Every backup plan they'd made was probably blown. Naomi deleted her unsent message. She couldn't risk leading them to Jordan. Instead, she typed, I love you. Trust me. Then she did the hardest thing she'd ever done. She turned off the phone, gathered her belongings, and walked out of the coffee shop. She had 24 hours to save her mother, save Jordan, and expose a conspiracy that went to the highest levels of Boston society, and she'd have to do it alone. But as she merged into the busy Cambridge streets, Naomi smiled, because Victoria had made a crucial mistake. She'd revealed something about Jordan's father's death that changed everything, something that proved what Naomi had suspected while analyzing the financial records. The accident hadn't been ordered by Richard Monroe. It had been ordered by the board, the same board that had worked with Jordan's father for decades, which meant Naomi hailed a cab, her mind already forming a desperate plan. Mass General, please, she told the driver. It was time to talk to her mother, because if Naomi was right, Letitia Brooks, former investigative journalist turned community activist, might be the only person left in Boston they could trust, and the only person who could help Naomi set up the most dangerous sting of their lives. As the cab pulled away, she touched her chest where her wedding ring hung on a chain beneath her shirt. Hold on, Jordan, she thought, just a little longer. 24 hours to save everything. The game was about to change. You really love him, don't you? Naomi looked up from her laptop to find her mother studying her with knowing eyes. They'd been working for hours in Letitia's hospital room, transformed now into an unlikely command center. Papers covered the bed. 2 laptops hummed, and the whiteboard normally used for medical notes was filled with their hastily drawn connection maps. Is it that obvious? Naomi asked, touching the ring still hanging beneath her shirt. Baby girl, I knew the moment I saw that photo of you dancing. Letitia's smile was gentle, despite the oxygen tube in her nose. But you looked at that man the same way I used to look at your father. Before Naomi could respond, her mother's expression sharpened. Now, show me those board meeting minutes again, the ones from the month before Charles Whitmore's death. This was the side of Letitia Brooks that Boston's corrupt elite hadn't counted on. The investigative journalist who'd exposed 3 major corruption scandals before illness had forced her into early retirement. The woman who'd taught her daughter that truth was worth fighting for. Here, Naomi pulled up the document. See how they pushed through these policy changes, requiring double authentication for any internal investigations, restricting access to historical transaction records. They were closing ranks, Letitia murmured, scanning the text. They knew Charles was going to expose them, so they created bureaucratic barriers, made it impossible for anyone else to follow the money. She looked up sharply. Did Jordan ever tell you exactly what proof his father had? No. Naomi ran a tired hand through her hair. Just that he found discrepancies in the Asian acquisitions. But Mom, what if? What if he found something bigger? Something that made them willing to kill their own partner? Like the fact that the corruption didn't start with those acquisitions. Letitia's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard. Baby, look at this. She turned the screen, showing an article from 15 years ago, a small piece about a suspicious fire at Whitmore & Co. S Records storage facility. 3 board members resigned the week after this fire. All of them died in separate accidents within the year. Naomi's breath caught. They've done this before. They're a hydra. Letitia's voice was grim. Cut off one head, silence one threat, and 2 more take its place. The corruption just gets deeper, the secret's darker. She reached for her daughter's hand. Which is why this plan of yours is insane. We don't have a choice. Naomi squeezed her mother's fingers. They gave me 24 hours. She checked her watch. 18 now, to betray Jordan and hand over the evidence. If I don't, they'll frame him for everything. Letitia's jaw set in a familiar, stubborn line. Not on my watch. Your father didn't raise you to run from bullies, and I didn't spend 20 years exposing corruption to watch my daughter bow to it now. Naomi's throat tightened. I can't lose you, Mom. You won't. Letitia's eyes blazed with her old fire. Because we're going to beat them at their own game. She pointed to the whiteboard. The pieces are in place. Your evidence is safe. Split between 3 secure locations. Time-release Deadman switches if anything happens to either of us. Your contacts at the SEC and FBI are ready? On standby. But we can't move until we have proof of the board's direct involvement in Jordan's father's death. Without that, it's just financial crimes. They'll escape with fines and suspended sentences. Then it's time. Letitia reached for her phone. I'm calling in my last favor at the Globe. Remember Peter Chen? Your old editor. Naomi frowned. Mom, we can't trust the media with this yet. Peter retired last year. But his daughter, a fierce smile curved Letitia's lips, works as Richard Monroe's executive assistant. Understanding dawned. She's our way in. More than that, she's been gathering her own evidence, waiting for a chance to expose him. Peter's been keeping her documentation safe. Letitia started dialing. Sometimes, baby girl, the best way to fight a hydra is to let all its heads strike at once. But before she could complete the call, Naomi's burner phone, silent for hours, buzzed with an urgent message from Jordan. Board meeting called. Monroe claims proof of embezzlement. They're moving against me now. No, Naomi breathed. We're not ready. Another text followed. Don't intervene. Too dangerous. Remember I love you. Like hell, Naomi muttered, already grabbing her coat. What is it? Letitia demanded. They're forcing our hand. Naomi quickly forwarded her mother all the evidence files. Call Peter. Get his daughter's proof. I have to go. Naomi, wait. Mom! She turned at the door. I know it's crazy. I know it's dangerous. But I love him, and he's walking into a trap thinking he's protecting me. Letitia's expression softened. Then go get your man, baby girl. I'll handle things here. Her smile turned fierce. Those corrupt bastards have no idea who they're dealing with. The Brooks women don't break under pressure. We break the whole damn system." Naomi blew her mother a kiss and ran. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with another message from Jordan, but she didn't need to read it. She knew where he'd be, the same place his father had gone when facing his final choice. The private boardroom on the top floor of Whitmore & Co., where Boston's most powerful family was about to learn that love made better weapons than fear. Because while they'd been watching Jordan, following Naomi, threatening Letitia, they'd forgotten the most important rule of chess. Sometimes the queen's sacrifice is really a trap, and Naomi Brooks hadn't just learned to play their game, she'd learned to win it. As she drove toward the city, breaking every speed limit, her mother's voice came through the car's Bluetooth. Peter's daughter came through. She has recordings, board meetings, Richard Monroe confessing everything about Charles's death. A pause. "Baby girl, it's worse than we thought. The whole thing goes back 30 years. Half of Boston's old money is implicated." "Good," Naomi said grimly, swerving through traffic. Because I'm done playing defense." She touched her wedding ring, thinking of Jordan facing the board alone, thinking he was protecting her. But he'd forgotten something important. Their marriage might have started as a contract, but it had become a promise. And Naomi Brooks Whitmore kept her promises. "Send everything," she told her mother, "to everyone. The SEC, FBI, every news outlet. Time to let the Hydra tear itself apart." Behind her, distant thunder rolled across Boston Harbor, nature itself anticipating the storm about to break. 16 floors up, in a room full of people who thought themselves gods, Jordan Whitmore was about to discover what real power looked like, love that refused to surrender. The Whitmore & Co. building had never felt taller than it did in the rain-soaked twilight. Naomi's heels clicked against marble as she crossed the lobby, her heart thundering in time with the storm outside. The night security guard, who'd watched her leave in tears 10 days ago, straightened in surprise. "Mrs. Whitmore." "Don't call anyone," she said, swiping her still-active security card. "For your own protection." The elevator ride to the 16th floor felt endless. Her phone buzzed continuously with updates from her mother. "FBI en route. SEC has the files, Globe breaking the story in 15 minutes. But it was the silence from Jordan that terrified her. The boardroom doors loomed ahead, heavy oak panels that had witnessed decades of secrets. Voices carried through them. Richard Monroe's smug baritone, Victoria Ashworth's cultured consonants, and Jordan's controlled tone, so familiar it made her heart ache. "The evidence is quite clear," Richard was saying. "Unauthorized transfers, offshore accounts, all traced back to your personal codes. The same evidence that supposedly implicated my father." Jordan's voice was steel. "Before you arranged his accident." A sharp laugh. "Evelyn, still telling yourself that story? Your father died drunk and reckless, just like you'll be remembered, the heir who couldn't handle the pressure." Naomi eased the door open silently, slipping into the shadows at the back of the room. None of the board members facing Jordan noticed her. They were too focused on their prey, Jordan standing alone at the head of the table, his shoulders straight despite the weight of their accusations. "The board has voted," Victoria announced. "You'll resign immediately, citing personal issues. The scandal will be contained. Your unfortunate marriage can end quietly." Her smile was serpentine. "And unless you'd prefer to join your father in disgrace." Jordan's hands clenched on the table. "And if I refuse, then—" Richard Monroe rose, menace in every line of his expensive suit. "Then what?" Naomi's voice cut through the room like a whip. "You'll arrange another accident." Every head turned. Jordan's eyes met hers, 1,000 emotions flashing through them. Love, fear, desperation. She saw him start to speak, to warn her away, but she was done hiding. "Naomi," Evelyn's lips curved. "How dramatic. But you're too late. Your husband's crimes are actually yours." Naomi moved forward, her mother's fierce spirit in every step. "All of yours. For 30 years, you've been stealing, killing, corrupting everything the Whitmore name stood for." Richard's face darkened. "Security won't come." Naomi smiled. They're a bit busy with the FBI agents currently entering the building. The boardroom erupted. Victoria lunged for her phone. Two directors headed for the doors, but Richard Monroe's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough! You have no proof. No one will believe. The recordings your daughter made say otherwise." Richard went still. "What? Lisa Monroe?" Naomi savored his shock. "Your own daughter, recording every meeting where you bragged about Charles Whitmore's murder. About all the murders." She turned to the panicking board members. "The fire that destroyed the records 15 years ago. The 3 directors who died afterward. She has those recordings too." "You're bluffing," Evelyn snarled, but her face had gone pale. "Check your phones," Naomi said softly. "The story's breaking now. Every major news outlet, 30 years of corruption exposed. The SEC has frozen all the accounts. The FBI is—" The boardroom doors burst open. Federal agents poured in, followed by stone-faced forensic accountants. Richard Monroe lunged for Naomi, only to find Jordan's fist connecting with his jaw. "Don't," Jordan growled, standing between them. "Touch my wife." What followed was chaos. Victoria tried to delete files on her phone and was immediately cuffed. 3 board members attempted to claim whistleblower status. Evelyn broke down, screaming accusations at her father. But Naomi saw only Jordan, his eyes never leaving her face as the agents swarmed around them. "You impossible, beautiful, reckless woman," he breathed. "I told you not to come. Since when do I follow orders?" She stepped closer, needing to touch him, to make sure he was real after 10 days of aching separation. "How did you—" "Your father wasn't the only one gathering evidence." She pressed her forehead to his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. "He was working with my mother, Jordan. Back when she was a journalist, she helped him investigate the first wave of corruption 15 years ago." Jordan's arms tightened around her. "The fire. They threatened her family then, just like they threatened us now. She backed off, got sick, but she never stopped watching, never stopped gathering proof." Naomi looked up at him through tears. "She was never sick from natural causes, Jordan. They've been poisoning her for years through her medication, keeping her weak, controlled." "My God," his voice broke. "Naomi, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to what? To fall in love with you, to fight for you." She touched his face, memorizing every line. "You don't get to decide what I risk for love." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, heedless of the federal agents and crying board members around them. When they broke apart, his eyes were wet. "I do love you. God help me. I love you more than anything." "Then help me finish this." She took his hand, turning to the chaos of arrests and evidence collection. "Help me make it right." But before Jordan could respond, a single gunshot cracked through the room. Evelyn Monroe stood by her father's desk, a small pistol shaking in her manicured hands. Blood spread across Richard Monroe's chest, where he'd stepped in front of her target. "Jordan." "Daddy!" Evelyn's voice was small, childlike. The gun clattered to the floor as she stared at her father, crumpling before her. FBI agents swarmed. Someone was calling for medical help. But Richard Monroe's last words, choked out through bloody lips, froze everyone in the room. The dead man's switch, already activated. Everything burns in 5 hours. Then his eyes went glassy, fixing on something none of them could see. Naomi clutched Jordan's hand as federal agents rushed to secure Evelyn, to clear the room, to call for backup, because she knew what Richard's words meant. Somewhere in the city, a countdown had started. In 5 hours, every server, every backup, every piece of evidence they'd gathered would be destroyed by viruses and fail-safes planted years ago, unless they could find and stop it. "Jordan." She turned to her husband, seeing the same determination in his eyes. "We're not done." "No," he agreed, pulling her close as chaos swirled around them. "But this time, we finish it together." Outside, the storm raged over Boston Harbor. They had 5 hours to save 30 years of evidence, to ensure justice for every life the board had destroyed, to finally end the legacy of corruption that had claimed Jordan's father and nearly destroyed them both. But as Jordan's hands clasped hers, strong and sure, Naomi felt nothing but certainty. Because some loves were worth any risk, and some truths refused to stay buried. 4 hours and 37 minutes until everything burned. The Whitmore & Co. tech center hummed with desperate energy. FBI cyber units huddled over computers. Forensic accountants rushed between servers. And in the center of it all, Jordan and Naomi worked side by side, racing to unravel 30 years of carefully laid traps. "The system keeps bouncing us back to these 3 servers," Jordan muttered, his tie loose, sleeves rolled up as he typed. "But they're not connected to any network we can find. Because they're not here." Naomi stared at the building schematics on her screen, a pattern suddenly emerging. "Jordan, what's the one place in Boston your father trusted more than this building?" His fingers stilled. "The boathouse, of course. The private marina where Charles Whitmore had spent his last moments. Where better to hide the heart of a dead man's switch?" "We need to go." Naomi was already grabbing her coat. "Now, Mrs. Whitmore." The FBI agent in charge, a razor-sharp woman named Chen, stepped forward. "We have teams ready to—" "No," Jordan's voice was firm. "The security systems there are keyed to Whitmore DNA. Anyone else triggers an automatic shutdown." Agent Chen's eyes narrowed. "And Mrs. Whitmore is a Whitmore." Jordan took Naomi's hand. "In every way that matters." They drove through the storm-lashed night, the clock ticking in their heads. 4 hours, then 3. Boston's streets gleamed like black glass, reflecting emergency lights as federal agents raided homes and offices across the city. The corruption's death throes were shaking the foundations of power. The marina was deserted, waves crashing against empty slips. Only one boat remained, the sleek yacht where Charles Whitmore had spent his final hours, where he'd chosen death over surrender. There, Jordan pointed to a small building near the end of the pier. "Father's private office." They ran through the rain, shoes slipping on wet boards. The door required both retinal and fingerprint scans, but Jordan's access still worked. Inside, beneath the expected sailing memorabilia and leather furniture, they found what they were looking for, a hidden staircase leading to a state-of-the-art server room. "Richard helped design this place," Jordan said as they descended. "He must have built in his own back door, a way to destroy everything if they were ever exposed." 3 hours left. The servers cast an eerie blue glow over them as they worked. Jordan handled the hardware he'd grown up learning, while Naomi's financial expertise helped her track the virus's likely paths. But with each passing minute, the task seemed more impossible. "It's too complex," Jordan finally admitted, frustration etching his features. "Even if we find the trigger point, disarming it could activate a worse fail-safe. Then we don't disarm it." Naomi straightened, an idea taking shape. "We redirect it." "What?" "Your father didn't just store evidence here. He stored everything, including the original corruption." Jordan's eyes lit with understanding. "If we can't stop the virus, we point it at the files they wanted to protect instead of the ones they wanted to destroy." 2 hours. Their fingers flew over keyboards, racing time and probability. Years of working together, first as boss and assistant, then as fake spouses, now as true partners, had taught them each other's rhythms. They moved in sync, finishing each other's thoughts, building on each other's ideas. "Found it." Naomi's triumph cut through the humming silence, the trigger sequence. "But Jordan, we'll only get one chance." He moved behind her, reading over her shoulder. If we're wrong, everything burns." She leaned back against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "But if we're right, we give my father justice." His arms tightened around her. "We give your mother her health back. We give us a future." 1 hour. The final coding was delicate, requiring both their access credentials working in perfect harmony. Outside, the storm reached its peak, lightning illuminating the marina in stark flashes. "Ready?" Jordan's hand covered hers on the keyboard. Naomi thought of everything that had led them here, a desperate business arrangement, a fake marriage, real love blooming in the shadows of lies. "Ready." They pressed enter together. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the servers began to pulse with new energy. Data flowed through pathways they'd created, seeking new targets. On their screens, decades of dirty secrets began to dissolve, while evidence of crimes rose to the surface, copying itself to secure federal servers. "It's working," Naomi breathed. "Jordan, it's—" The lights went out. Emergency generators kicked in, bathing them in red warning lights. A familiar voice echoed through hidden speakers. Richard Monroe's final trap. "I knew you'd come here." His recorded voice was smug, even in death. "So predictable, trying to save everything. Just like your father, time for history to repeat itself." Metal shutters slammed down over the exits. The ventilation system wheezed, pumping in something that smelled wrong. "Gas!" Jordan coughed. "Naomi, run!" But the doors were sealed, like father, like son, trapped in a no-win scenario. "Except, your father was alone," Naomi said, pulling Jordan toward the servers. "And you're not," because Charles Whitmore had taught his son everything about the company's systems, but Naomi's mother had taught her something else, how to think like a journalist, how to find the story behind the story. "The ventilation," she gasped through the thickening air. "It's not just pumping gas in, it's pumping air out," Jordan caught her meaning, "creating a vacuum to trigger." "The fire suppression system," they said together. Jordan's fingers shook as he pulled up the environmental controls. The gas was making it hard to think, but Naomi held him steady, her mind racing through possibilities. "Richard would have wanted to watch," she mumbled, fighting dizziness. "Security cameras. Connected to—" Jordan coughed, "to the main power grid." Together, they traced the camera feeds, finding the weakness in Richard's plan. He'd wanted to witness his revenge, which meant— there! Naomi pointed to a line of code. "Reroute the camera power. To override the ventilation." Jordan completed. Their last conscious act was pressing enter once more. The explosion of fresh air hitting their lungs drove them to their knees. Above them, the ventilation system groaned as Jordan's override forced it to reverse, clearing the gas. The metal shutters retreated. Dawn light spilled down the stairs, along with the sound of approaching sirens. They held each other, breathing deeply, as FBI agents and paramedics swarmed the room. Around them, servers hummed with victory, their altered virus eating away decades of corruption while preserving the truth. "You know," Jordan said hoarsely, helping Naomi to her feet. "Most couples spend their first month of marriage going on dinner dates." "Boring," she smiled against his chest. "I much prefer taking down criminal empires with my husband." "Your real husband now." He touched her face with trembling fingers. "No more contracts, no more pretending, no more lies," she agreed. "Just us, building something true from all the fake pieces." Later, after the paramedics had checked them out, after federal agents had secured the servers and evidence, they stood on the pier watching sunrise paint Boston Harbor in gold. The storm had broken, leaving behind a washed, clean world full of possibility. "I never thanked you," Jordan said softly, "for saving me, not just tonight, but from the moment you agreed to that insane arrangement." "You saved me too," Naomi turned in his arms, "from playing it safe, from settling for less than love." He kissed her then, sweet and deep, full of promises they'd keep forever. When they broke apart, she laughed suddenly. "Eh, what? I just realized we never had a real wedding. No flowers, no vows, no first dance that wasn't for show." Jordan's smile was softer than she'd ever seen it. "Then marry me again, Naomi Brooks. For real this time? No contracts? No hidden agendas? Just love." "Yes." She kissed him again, tasting joy and future on his lips. "But this time, I'm writing my own vows." "Oh, Her eyes sparkled. "Starting with, I promise to always be your partner in crime fighting." His laugh echoed across the water, real and free and full of love. Behind them, Boston stirred to life, a city waking to headlines of justice served and corruption exposed. Before them stretched a future they'd build together, on foundations of truth instead of convenience. And as Jordan pulled her close for another kiss, Naomi smiled against his lips. Because sometimes the fakest things could lead to the truest love. All you had to do was brave enough to choose it. The end. Thanks for watching to the end. Did you like the story? Tell us what you thought in the comments below. We want to know what you think. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe now for more exciting stories you won't want to miss. Activate the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. See you in the next story. See you there.